Good evening and welcome to the public meeting of the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, January the 9th, 2019. At this moment, I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is video voice recorded and live streamed from the hdsb.ca website. I would also ask that you turn any devices you have to silent mode. All trustees are present this evening and we only have one superintendent away. Executive Officer McFadden is ill. This evening, Trustee Clark will be honoring the land.
Thank you. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Ottawadoran, the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather here on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walk before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to thank and acknowledge the Mississaugas of the First Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you, Trustee Clark. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Seeing none, we're up to the agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Reynolds, seconded by Trustee Gray. Is there any discussion on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing no discussion. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, next we are up to the Inspire Awards. Everyone in the Halton District School Board community can nominate or be nominated: families, neighbors, related organizations, staff, students, and school volunteers. The Inspire Award is given to an individual or group that is formally or informally associated with the Halton District School Board, who support our students and their achievements through exemplary caring, initiative, innovation, and creativity. Award recipients choose where they would like to receive their award, and this evening we have one Inspire Award presentation. I would like to invite Trustee Reynolds to the front, please. And I would like to invite Sheila Slattery Ford to the front, please. Sheila is an advocate for youth in the Aldershot area and is a highly regarded member of the Aldershot school community. She has worked diligently with students and staff over the years through her involvement with the Our Click Kids Network Aldershot Hub and by playing a major role in numerous other initiatives to support youth. Sheila leads a committee comprised of school and community leaders who meet regularly to discuss issues relating to students in our schools and how to better support students. Under Sheila's leadership, the Sport for You Saturday morning sports program is offered to students in the area. Sheila has been instrumental in the creation and success of Youth Kitchen, a program that began in 2014 to provide students with after-school cooking sessions where they can earn a cooking certificate. She has played a major role in Alderfest, a yearly festival for youth and families held in the neighborhood. Sheila is an inspiration to staff, students, parents, and community members. Her devotion to youth in the community is admirable. Congratulations. Okay, we had another Inspire Award winner, but this person has chosen to receive their award at their place of work, which is Milton District High School, and that is Robert Sino. He's a teacher. Please do continue to nominate people or organizations who support our students and their achievements. We accept we accept nominations online at the hdsb.ca website. So we have no delegations this evening, but we do have two presentations. The first is number 231, Parr Update, Superintendent Blackwell and Entourage.
So thank you. I'm here to provide an update, and I am glad to welcome Joel Zinn. Joel is from MM Robinson, and Joel is the transitions lead that we provided to MM Robinson for this year in responsibility for the smooth transition of students from Lester B. Pearson to MM Robinson. And Joel was a former LBP teacher. And you may recognize Claire Proto, who's the principal of MM Robinson. So I will turn it over to them.
Hi, everybody. I've been here before doing this a couple of times, and I'm really happy to come back again and give you another update on the integration and how it's gone. I wanted to step back a little bit in introducing what we're talking about. The Parr was a really rough process, and there was a lot of considerations that went into it. And I think something that we didn't talk about at the time that we're now in a state of is a state of change in all the best ways. The school is very settled, and it's only still first semester of the first year, and the school is very settled. The thing that has been the most rewarding is that this was an opportunity as a catalyst for change in all aspects of the building, in program, in student vision, and student voice that we wouldn't have had otherwise. When you go into a school as a principal, you take some time to review the school and look at the school culture and climate and check what student voice is happening and see where you want to implement different vision and move things forward. Because so many things were already changing, this was a catalyst to blow things up in a way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. People were already in a state of flux, and they knew that, so they said, let's review best practices from both buildings or ask the why of what we're doing in either building and completely change that. So our culture now is a culture of asking why. Not what did Pearson do, what did MM do, but why did we do either, and what should we be doing now collectively with a new school vision? Some of the things that we're doing in that regard, we're looking at best practices in basic teaching. What are the evaluations we're offering? Our English department is doing a lot on project-based learning and skills as opposed to I study Macbeth. What are the skills you're learning in the English class, and what projects are you doing that reflect those skills? And it's because you're taking two different sets of teaching and you say, maybe we just push all this aside and do some bigger reflection and then move towards that as a new process. We have our grade 9 engineering, which although those are grade 9s, it didn't come from either school separately. It's because the entire math science department has moved into one room with one vision of let's talk about innovation in our programming and again, project development and skills that will move into grade 10 and grade 11. And that is not something we could have moved forward as quickly as we did if it hadn't been for the integration of the two schools. We're looking at policy review, what are best practices for things that every school should probably review periodically, but lates, zeros, things that are just regular process in a school, again, are things that we're able to sit back with our heads team and say, if you decided we're going to go a completely different direction with best practice in your department, is your department ready to do that? And the answer is always yes, which has been fantastic. Kids are expecting that from us now, which is wonderful because it raises the bar. The other thing is increased student voice. So because we had such a push between the two schools to say, how are you feeling? What does this look like? What are the questions you have? That's continued on. And we're going to give you an example of program change, reflection, blowing things up in student voice in something that we completely revised because of the integration. video.
Today we're going to be taking 43 students from all grades and pathways at Robinson High School to Adventure Works in Ancaster to have 2 full days of brainstorming, team building, and planning for the leadership structure for the rest of the school year.
We're here at the Adventure Learning Center at Canterbury Hills, and today we'll be looking at different ways to lay the foundation out for new coming people that are coming to Robinson.
Before we had like the 2 different schools, and now we're coming together in one, so we want to give kind of everyone an opportunity to have a leadership role if they want to.
This means a lot for me personally coming from Lester B. Pearson, because here we can learn to incorporate new ideas for a larger group of people as opposed to LBP where we're just smaller amounts. So learning these new ways is really going to be impactful for me and all these new people coming as well.
So we get to kind of explore what we want our new school to look like here with kind of everyone who's here. I think it'll be super cool to listen to everyone's ideas and to kind of like learn from each other and see what we want to form for this year.
A really great time. The waterfall was so pretty and I love it. I've met so many new people, I made friends. It's really exciting and I love it.
So we decided on a government-style basis to this. So there's a central group called the USB, the United Student Body, and basically the goal is for other groups and clubs to give in all the information and goals that they want to achieve, and the USB tries their best to help them achieve those goals.
It's a group of students. We have board directors, communication managers, and secretaries. Also, we'll be having grade representatives, so 1 representative for each grade, just so every grade has their voice that they can share at the meetings.
I do feel that everyone's voice was represented, especially when they got us in groups and told us to get into detail about what we wanted the school to look like and how we wanted it to change in a good way, not so we weren't ourselves anymore, but so we could all meld together with Pearson.
So it's one example of change in process, and the teachers going had the direction from administration, don't interfere, which made them very uncomfortable. And the students had some heated debates about what it should look like to make sure that they represent a different and new student population. And in the end, they came up with a structure that's different than what either school had and different than anything I'd seen elsewhere, but I knew that they probably knew and we didn't what it should truly look like. The other thing we were really impressed with also is they wanted to know more about the different pathways and how they could make sure that all students from all pathways were represented, including our CPP program. So there's 2 spots on that board for CPP students from our CPP program, and an additional spot where a student said, I think we should have an advocate that is always with those 2 students to make sure that their voices are heard as this goes forward. So it's just a snippet of taking the time to now use all of these changes in the best way and really reflect the larger changes moving forward for the vision of the school.
Great. So my job as transitions lead then was we sat down with admin and figured out what kind of a vision for the school, and taking all the input that we've gotten from students and from staff, it turned almost into a little bit of a rebrand because the school is new. because we do have two schools coming together and we're changing so many things, is that we want to rebrand who we are, not just to the community, but our school community inside, so our students, our faculty, the parents of the community, but also to our feeder schools and to the larger community as well. So that's kind of the role that I've taken on here as transitions lead. So we kick things off with our staff. It was important for our staff to get on board that this is going to be something different this year. It's not going to be the same school you come into every year. We kicked it off with a little shindig Friday at Claire's place. Very well attended. But again, it was something, it was like 95% of our staff were there. And it's something different. You don't always see that with the staff. It was something's new, something's a buzz. We've placed some of our staff meetings with passion projects. So you get together with like-minded individuals on staff and pushing forward towards something that you want to see affecting some change at school. It's allowing us to get together, allows us to integrate a little bit more. For our students, we kicked it off with I think you've heard about our Choose Your Own Adventure field trip. So we had 11 field trips on one day. Go with, again, like-minded individuals. Find people at school who think the way you do, who like the things that you like, right? Go out, have some fun, come back, okay, and see where we're at from there. We have lots of great stuff happening. Our USB's been amazing. Everything else from pep rallies, dances, all the good stuff that happen at schools. But our students, it's a little bit, you can feel it at the school. I asked a couple of teachers today who I knew would give me straight answers, who have been at MM, because I'm new from Pearson. Came from MM and said, what's the biggest change this year for you? Positive, negative, doesn't matter what is it. He goes, it's the energy. He goes, he can feel, he's been there for 18 years. And he goes, this year, it feels like it's brand new again. He's kind of getting caught up in it, because I'm kind of getting caught up in it a little bit, the excitement, and he can feel it. That goes with our increased student involvement. So we're running a full complement of sports teams that we haven't been able to do at Pearson or at MM for the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, and the students feel that. They're able to get involved. There's a place for them to be. Our clubs and our teams. We're starting new clubs and teams. So we have a dance team this year. We didn't have a dance team on the docket before we started. Why did it come about? 2 kids approached staff and said, we want a dance team. And it's our job as staff then to be like, okay, how do we make this happen? We found someone who has some expertise, and away they go. They started as a club. Now they're a team going to competitions. And this is a kind of rebranding now we're trying to take back into the community. So I went to all the road shows, all of our feeder schools, and we built the buzz. And it wasn't a sit down, listen to me talk. I'm not the best speaker. It is a let's get active, let's show you what MM's all about. And it's interactive and it's engaging. We had the kids doing problem solving stuff real quick, minute to win it, and the kids start to get excited. And I live in the community. I'm a head and force guy. I live around the corner. I see lots of people at rinks, at soccer, at volleyball. I'm everywhere with my kids. And it is changing. People are coming to me now, okay, yeah, but what's MM really like? I'm saying, I'm telling you exactly what it's like. This is what it's like, what you see, and when you come into our building now, this is what it's like here. And it's kind of permeating itself through everywhere we go. So in terms of transition, I mean, I'm a raw, positive guy. You can probably tell by I'm all excited about this stuff. I'm not saying there's not hiccups along the way. I mean, we all know that's going to happen. It's normal. But in terms of what's happening at the school and the direction we're taking, and I think what's changing in the community, and again, it started with our kids and how they see themselves, right? It's changing the narrative that they're now taking to home to their parents, and the narrative their parents are now taking home to other parents. Claire shared with me, she probably tell what I did, about the Facebook update they got from a parent. A parent cut and pasted what was on a Facebook group. And it was a parent who came to our Grady Night. And they were trying to ask other parents, it was an amazing night, loved it, is this really what it's like at MM? And a grade 9 student's parent chimed in and said, my daughter made the decision to leave a lot of her friends and come to MMR, and she's absolutely loving it. Everything you saw there, that is what really happening. And for us, I think in terms of rebranding our school and a transition, I think we're starting to make inroads now, again, with our own parent community, our own students, our own faculty, and with that outside in the community as well. I think that covered most of the stuff that I was going to talk about. Great things are happening.
And you are a good speaker, Joel. Joel did mention he has 3 children involved in multiple activities. So I think at this time we'll take questions. If you have any questions for Claire and Joel, if not, then we'll say thank you and I'll continue with a couple more slides.
I have 2 people on the speakers list. Joanna Trustee Oliver, is this specifically about MM Robinson? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Superintendent Blackwell. Again, I'm very impressed with what I'm hearing. Thank you, Claire and Joel, for delivering the synopsis of what's happening to date. I'm very excited to hear how you're proceeding and how well things are moving forward and how different things are becoming with the integration in building a new body, a school body and community. I'm particularly pleased to hear that you're not just even accepting best practices and asking, how things were done at each school and trying to kind of arrive at the best model, but that you're probing and asking why, and really delving deep into that, and therefore arriving at something much more better, innovative, cohesive, and brand new. So that's exciting. And I love that the students seem to have taken the same approach without leadership from administration, and arrived very much at the same kind of a model for their student leadership with the USB model. So that's exciting. I love the idea of passion projects. And my wish is that once things are settled, that you'll be able to share your best practices and processes and how things have worked with all of our HDSB secondary principals, so they can take from that as well. So thank you so much, and continued success to you.
Trustee Clark.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So after the USB elections, so I was following those. I was really interested to see all the ideas that all the candidates had. I sat down with 2 of the 3 board of directors successfully elected to that organization, and I was so very interested that they had this broad and new perspective on how student government was going to work with the staff. So I was just wondering if you can elaborate a little more about some of the things that this USB has taken on as sort of something they're doing this year, because I know a lot of other student council presidents that Trustee Mang and I have talked to in the past, they sometimes have some trouble getting these ideas off the ground. So what are some of the things that this USB, this brand new organization, are doing so well?
So they are just getting things off the ground, because the one difficulty was we couldn't have any elections or any formation of this until school started and things got settled. So we went the first little bit of the school year without any formal student leadership. Now that they're a formal unit, they are meeting about once a month, and we're meeting, admin's meeting with them then once a month as well. One of the things they're looking at is the school culture and the school climate in the physical building, but also the number of extracurriculars we have running and what do we have running and for whom. That's something that admin highlighted to them. Our school's changing even further next year when we get additional programming. So we want the students to look at, is there something for everyone? How do you know? And then we're going to start to collect data on that very thing, and the students will be heavily involved in that. So I think that's our next big step, is to make sure that they've made the goal and the mandate to be representative. How do they know that they're doing that very thing? Welcome.
Okay, well, no one else is on the list, but I have a question. And that is, during the Parr, there was always a concern that the feeder schools that were not currently feeder schools, the French immersion schools, would they buy in? And I was just wondering how your grade 8 night went, and request for information. What do you think your numbers will be like next year? I know that the grade 8 night was during a storm, but if you could answer that, that'd be great.
The actual grade 8 night, we modeled it differently than any other school I'd been to. So if you've ever been to Robinson, the front foyer is massive. It's this massive open space. We had the first 5 to 6 minutes standing room only, and that was the only time that we formally addressed the entire group of people that had come for that evening. Despite the snowstorm, we had between 700 and 800 people come. So that foyer was full. We introduced the entire leadership team, and then we sent people on their way. And they had a map, and they had 2 options. They could either go into the auditorium for a 20-minute assembly, where we talked about some of the formalities that some parents wanted to hear. We got that feedback from last year. Or they could go on a tour, and the tour was 100% interactive. Every teacher and student that were on the tour were told, you are not to have anyone sit and get. This is about experiencing the tone of the school and the variety of things that are happening. So we've got fantastic feedback from that. Very busy night, and it went longer than we'd anticipated just because people were staying behind and asking questions. We also had a special FI information session that evening because some of the French immersion parents had different questions than other parents. So we ran that. As far as getting to the other feeder schools, that's where Joel has just knocked it out of the park. Sports reference, right?
Like
yeah,
very good. You did it right.
Right?
Yes.
Shopping references, I will always have right. Yeah, and going to the feeder schools, that's been a little more personal and very important for us.
Yeah, so again, the Grady Night, though, at school, we were lucky enough to have some admin at our school. They're allowing us to take some chances. And we took a huge risk that night by not having formal, not having what you're used to. It was a little bit of organized chaos going on, but there was something for everybody, and no one was locked into something they didn't want to see. And so the whole idea was to try to attract people to where they were. So we had interactive displays and kids in there doing stuff and people making things, and people got sucked in to areas as opposed to being forced to go places. And it was such a shift for the parents. And a lot of the feedback I got from parents in the night was, I wanted to see more. And we were there at like 9 o'clock, 9:10, 9:15. I wanted to leave. But they kept wanting to talk because there was so much for them to see and do. For the grade 8 road shows, it was kind of like, I'm going to call it my baby. I wanted them to go well, and I wanted us to go. I'm a competitive person by nature, and I wanted to go out there and show everybody how great the school is. Because I'll be honest with you, I told you, I lived in Hedden Forest, and I didn't know what it was really like either. And I'd heard what everybody else in the neighborhood was saying about this school, and then I got here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's so much good in this school, and so many great things happening. Nobody knows about it. So I kind of took that upon myself. So we went to the road shows and the feeder schools, and it was, like I said, it was interactive. It was high energy. This is what MM Robinson is really like. And I kept calling it the new MM Robinson, just because we had a chance to rebrand ourselves and a chance to make some changes. And I want everyone to know that we're taking advantage of those. We're not going to sit and do what we've always done. We're doing different things, and we're a different place to be. So the feedback I got called back to 3 of the schools. 2 of them were from our father feeder schools, because the kids had more questions. They actually asked their staff to bring us back, and so we could address them again and ask some questions. So I think for me, in my head, that was a little bit of a win for us in terms of kids are interested, they're excited about what we have to offer.
Okay, that's the end of questions for this section. Thank you so much.
I neglected to mention that Superintendent Pacetti was sitting in the little chair beside me. So very quickly, I know that was really a lot of what we wanted to see. I just wanted to give you an update. The Burlington Central High School IB night, again, a very successful evening. You can see this is the library. They anticipated a small crowd and there was overflow. At this point, you'll see that there are numbers there, historical numbers, for the grade 9 accelerated learning program, which feeds into IB. And right as of yesterday, there are 80 applications for the IB program at Burlington Central. And as you can see, 16 of them are from students that would feed into the school. Anyway, so that's a great statistic. Just as an update for Robert Bateman and Nelson, though the formal processes are not starting until next year, there's already been a lot of work that's happening. And I know that Claire has already had conversations with admin and teachers are already talking. There was a council meeting on November, the council meeting at Bateman where they invited Nelson parents. So that was a great opportunity. Students in the cosmetology program at Bateman are already helping out at Nelson. The LEAP program, students are working at Nelson with the Anti-Bullying Week. There was a session for, Claire mentioned additional programming coming to MM Robinson in September. So both MM Robinson and Nelson will be receiving Essential Program and LEAP starting September. There's already some work started on that. And the student services and student success staff are working together already to plan for that. And coming soon, so semester 2, the Nelson Leadership class and the Community Pathway program at Robert Bateman are going to be working together throughout the semester. I know that the students are taking a leadership role in working with the students in the Community Pathway program. It's supported by the Community Pathway program lead, Rob Garcia. And they're going to be working on low organizational games and activities and mentorship. So it's a really exciting opportunity. As well, you'll see that there are other opportunities that happen with the 2 schools that they've identified. And coming in the next month, the 3 staff, Robert Bateman, Nelson, and Burlington Central staff are going to be working together on a professional activity day. So that's all driven by the schools. That's something that they want to do and have sought that out. So that's great. And then based on the opportunity, one of the things that we heard at the Robert Bateman School Council meeting was, could we get a chance to go to Central? And of course, that was a welcome opportunity. So that's coming up next February 25th. And then we had the IEEE Stem. Since we last spoke, we had an open house, and you may be aware that we had probably about 1,300 people show up. Again, a snowy evening. I don't know why we host all these things when it's really snowy. One of the follow-ups to that was that we taped the event for people that were unable to attend, and you'll see that there have been 527 views of that video, which is a significant number compared to some of the other board videos that are around it. So I know before the holidays it was in the high 380s, so even in the last couple of weeks there have been a large number of views. So people are aware of the program. At this point we have 50 applications in. They are due January 19th, and decisions will be going to families. We have an advisory partner meeting with staff in February on one of our PD days, and we have continued learning and program development. And consistently, we are getting contacted by different companies. You'll see that Semtech and Boehringer Ingelheim, they've reached out to us. We've got some meetings set up with them. One is what's the term? They do high-speed data. They're very involved in television production. That's Semtech, and Boehringer Ingelheim is a biotech company as well. So we're excited about that. And we had the opportunity to visit SciTech in Peel and got some great learnings from them. And so now I'm going to quickly turn it over to Maya Pichetti, Superintendent Pichetti. We had promised that we would provide an update at this board meeting around the facilities.
Thank you, Superintendent Blackwell. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to go very quickly through the next few slides. What you see up there is the floor plan for Robinson. The areas outlined in red are what consist of Phase 2. Phase 1 is primarily completed at this point, and that includes both some interior renovations and in particular to the CPP, to create the CPP space, as well as some exterior work, including adding the cladding to the exterior of the building. I'm not sure if you can see where that dotted line is. So we added some new cladding to refresh the exterior of the building, and we redid the canopy over the front entrance to give the building a fresher look. And the red triangle at the bottom of the page there, that will be the location for the new 3-story classroom addition. And at the back of the building, the red outline spaces represent the new cafeteria, as well as the renovations that will be happening in the food kitchen area. And up on the corner is the architect's rendering of the new addition and what it will look like. It's a very modern addition. I think it's going to really enhance the look of the building from the street. And this is the Nelson Parr project, and Nelson is arguably just a little bit more complicated. So what I have up there to start with is the site plan, and colors aren't maybe as crisp as they could be, but if you look at the orange colored squares, there's one in the courtyard, there's a little strip at the bottom end of the building, and another square, oh, thank you, up there. Yes, I can do that, up here. So those represents the additions that will be built as part of Phase 1 for the Nelson Parr work. And I'll just go through those in the next slide. So what you have in the courtyard is the new 2-story cafeteria and food learning space, as well as on the second floor, the library. And that's part of Phase 1. All these light green areas are part of Phase 1. This is the new tech addition in Phase 1. And down here is the new I always have a trouble saying that, cosmetology. Did I say that right? Yes, thank you. And it's really, it's a small addition. It's more like a bay, but it's an important addition to have. So one of the reasons the design has come about to being 3 separate smaller additions is because this is a relatively contained building footprint. It would be very difficult to do one large addition on this site. And I think the architects responded very well by providing us with these 3 additions on the site. It's maybe a little bit more expensive to build that way, but I think there are tremendous benefits in that it places the new spaces close to the adjacent spaces that they should be next to. So we take advantage of the location within the building, and it allows us to also do some of this work without disrupting the school, because the additions are going to be zoned off, and the contractors can keep working there without disturbing the school too much. On the second floor plan, which is on the right side of the screen from where I'm sitting, that shows the second floor of the library, and draw your attention to the fact that there will be a new connecting bridge that will connect both sides of the building. So again, one of the unique things with this floor plan, if you were wearing a Fitbit, you'd get a lot of steps if you had to make your way around that floor plan to get from one end of the building to the other end of the building. And so I think that connecting bridge is going to make a huge difference in it sort of connecting the school, as it were. And it's a very light-filled space, so that's the way the architects have designed it. So I think that'll be a real asset. And just to say, the spaces that are there in blue are the phase 2 renovations. So in order to begin work to create the new CPP space, we really want to get the library construction underway, and that blue corner down here will be where the CPP space will be. And what's ideal about this space is that it's close to the front of the building, close to where the bus drop-off will be, and we will be able to create a secluded CPP outdoor area sort of tucked around the corner, and yet it still will be accessible to the community for after-hours use. And now the big news. So here we are. Where are we in the schedule? So we have draft site plan approval. We are almost there. There's just a couple notes regarding landscaping, which we have asked the architect, or the architect's in the process of submitting. So draft site plan approval is almost there for MMR. We have submitted to the ministry our request to proceed to tender. We did that a few months ago with the cost estimate. The Ministry of Education requested additional information, which we did submit. And now we are in the process of waiting to receive approval to proceed to tender. This is a good time of year to go out to tender. Contractors are still looking to fill their dance cards, so we may get some very good pricing if we were to go out in the next month. On the Nelson side, we have received draft site plan approval for both phase 1 and phase 2, which is good news. And there's a fair amount of site work also for Nelson. And we have also submitted approval to proceed for tendering for phase 1. We did that in mid-December. The ministry came back to us just before the Christmas break with requests for more information, which we are just tomorrow actually in the process of finishing. And again, we're hoping to receive approval to proceed very soon so that we can begin construction. We are going to do both these projects under construction management because we feel this will give us the greatest ability to schedule the work and try to expedite the work. It also allows us to deal with any concerns we might have about how the site is mobilized. So similar to the response we gave to Trustee Amos about what the Catholic Board is doing, these 2 projects will be done under construction management as well. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have some people on the speakers list. Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for all of the information. I think the two speakers at the beginning were really great. Yeah, and the two speakers following were really awesome as well. So much good stuff going on. My question is about iStem, and we have 50 applications to date. What's the ideal number or the capacity for that program?
So through Vice Chair Al Harrison, it's interesting because when we started the intent to design a program and have students enroll, we were hoping to get 60 kids. We thought that would be ideal. And based on the turnout, we've had that question quite a few times, 1,300 people. We do not have a cap. I mean, we are looking at students coming into the building, and we do have space at this time. We anticipate we might get anywhere up to 100 kids at this point, but we do not have a cap on it at this time.
Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. Just a couple quick questions about Nelson. I may have missed it, but the elevator, that was all figured out. I think at one point there was discussion that the elevator needed to be larger, something like that. And also the parking, I think, was that in the end figured out that we didn't need more parking? That's my memory. Just wanted to know.
Do you want to show the site plan? Oh, it's there. Oh, right. So in terms of the elevator, yes, we do have to put in a larger elevator, and that is included in the work. Elevators typically take about 2 years to do, so it's sort of one of those projects that's starting in phase 1, but probably will not be completed until phase 2. As for additional parking, yes, we are required through the site plan control process. We have been asked to include additional parking. So you will see this is all along here is the additional parking. But one of the other things that we have now is a dedicated bus drop-off lane. Oh, sorry. Which one is that? Bus drop-off lane in the front of the building as well. So the site is being altered a little bit. So yeah, that's the additional parking that we're required to provide.
Through you, Chair Grevence, to Trustee Gray, we have also approached the City of Burlington. There's an area north of the stadium that is currently parking, that's city-owned, and we're in conversations with them about the possibility of using that, thereby perhaps minimizing the amount of parking on that site there. But site plan approval was based on this, but now we're in conversations around that other part north of the stadium.
Trustee Shuttleworth.
Thank you. I have two questions, one for both of you to be equitable. First of all, for Trustee Blackwell, you spoke that there were 50 applicants for the STEM program. I know that this was trying to be seen as a magnet school. So I'm wondering where, or if you know where the applicants are from.
So through the chair to Trustee Shuttleworth, we do know where applicants are from. Probably at this point, I believe there are 13 that are actually from 7 and 8 Aldershot. And then we have students that are outside of our board altogether. We have students that are in our coterminous board, in a French school, homeschool. We're attracting a lot of people that are excited to bring their kids to our system.
Nice. Okay, and my second question is for Superintendent Pachetti. Yes, got it. Okay, you spoke about the secluded area for the CPP program. I'm just wondering what you mean by that, please.
Thank you. Through the Vice Chair Al Harrison, through you, Trustee Shuttleworth. When I say secluded, not that it's behind walls, simply that it's not in a high traffic area or too visible. So though it won't have walls, there will be landscaping to provide a little bit of protection and a sense of enclosure.
Okay, so follow up on that. So is it only for the CPP children, or is it for the whole school population?
Yeah. I'll just respond to this because we had this discussion in the past. It is for the entire school, just as it is at Robinson as well.
Thank you.
Trustee Oliver?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Superintendent Blackwell. I just have a comment around the Bateman-Nelson integration or merger. I'm very pleased to see that steps are being taken to allow for early merging and meeting up of the two school communities. That was truly my goal when I supported a delay in the merger, in that not only would families and students have the time to kind of wrap their minds around changing schools, but also that there would be opportunities for the two communities to meet and have some commonalities starting to build, or opportunities for integration and common events. So I'm very pleased to see that. And thank you. And again, congratulations and continued success with that.
Trustee Collard?
Thank you. I'm wondering if you can address the community concerns regarding any potential delays to getting the construction completed at Nelson. Do you still believe that with the minor setbacks we've had in timing, that everything will proceed according to the timelines?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. It certainly is a concern, but we feel that if we can begin the construction for the additions in March, if we have a warm winter, April, if we get a cold spell, because it's very difficult to do foundation work when we have a cold spell. We have to wait till the ground thaws a little bit. We can make a real push to get that work started, and it can get to a point and continue even when the students come back in September without too much disturbance to the students. So part of the reason we're doing construction management is because we can overlap trades, we can do some things to try to accelerate the schedule, but safety will always be our number one concern, and not to disturb the school while we're doing that work as well. So at this point, all I can do is hope that we get approval to proceed such that we can begin that construction come the spring.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Chair Drevens, to Trustee Collard, we do know that this is going through the ministry and the minister's office, and many boards have experienced delays, and I think that's a product of a new government in power, and they're trying to work their way through this. So but we have had lots of positive conversations with the ministry around this. So
thank you.
Trustee Oliver?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, a question to Superintendent Blackwell around the iStem program, and that actually your response to Trustee Shuttleworth around the magnet school and the types of students that the program is attracting. Homeschooled students, do we have access to be able to reach out to those families and inform them about this program? Do a specific reach out in order to be able to recruit them? Because I think this would be a really interesting program for parents and students who are seeking slightly different approach to education.
Through the chair to Trustee Oliver, we do not reach out to our homeschool families. We do encourage them to stay in communication with their homeschool. We are communicating with them annually just to ensure that, if there's an opportunity, we have a child that's homeschooled, for example, because they're traveling around the world. So we try to keep them informed, and we do reach out to our homeschooled families every year. They need to reapply to be homeschooled. At this point, we are not at a loss for applications, and I think that many of the opportunities and conversations that are happening within different communities, it's starting to spread and sharing that. So that might be something to consider.
Okay, so that exhausts our speakers list for questions. I wanted to take a moment and thank you very much for all the work that you're doing. This is, I mean, we all know it was a huge process to go through to make these decisions, and it is a massive process to go through to actually make all of those steps come to be. And your team is doing an excellent job in making those all those steps happen. And I mean, the presentation earlier was wonderful. And as a parent of a student at Robinson, I know it's wonderful. I hear it from the ground as well. And to see that the IB program is not only just surviving, it's going to flourish at its new location, and that the iStem program is doing well. We just got to get those construction tenders out there, and then everything will be hunky-dory. Thank you very much. Okay, our next presentation is number 232, Student Success Update, Superintendent Hunt Gibbons. This is associated with report 19005 on page 49 of your board package. Director Miller, you'd like to say something?
Through you, Chair Grevents, to Superintendent Hunt Gibbons. For the benefit of our new trustees, perhaps you could take a couple minutes at the front end, Superintendent Hunt Gibbons explaining a little bit of the history of student success. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. So all of our trustees have the report on student success and a full slide deck. What I'm sharing this evening is a series of slides just highlighting some of the information on student success and shining the light on some of our programs that are out there. As a bit of a history, our student success is not new to the province. Student success has been around for a while, and it was born out of some earlier work at the beginning of this century. That sounds so funny to say, but that is the truth. And student success is people, places, and things. So it's a catch-all. We all hope for student success, lowercase letters, and we surround students with student success, capital S on both, and those are the people, places, and formal supports that exist in the board and in the province. And within our board, we also have the ability, we have some programs that are very specific to us and not just the province. And so I'm going to take a few minutes and just highlight some of them for you. So student success, supporting transitions, whether they're grade 8 to 9, or transitions to any of our pathways following high school. Student success is a 7 to 12 program, and that is where the funding also exists. So there isn't student success prior to grade 7, although there certainly is that philosophy across the province and within the board. It is born out of a philosophy that all students can succeed, and that it is a wraparound approach, and that success comes in many forms, and that there are many pathways to success. Pathways is also a word that has double meaning, though. So we have many pathways, but we also have pathways programs in the province and in Halton. And so when you see the capital P on pathways, we're referring to formalized program initiatives that are helping students in areas, whether their lower P pathway happens to be to apprenticeship, college, community, university, or the workplace. And all of our schools offer pathways programs. One you may be familiar with is the Specialist High Skills Majors, known as the SHSM programs. SHSM is a program that exists in grade 11 and 12. Students have the ability to enroll in a SHSM program in their own school. And they may also transfer between schools within Halton in order to attend a SHSM program. And some schools, our fewest number is 2, and some schools offer SHSMs up to about 8 different SHSMs. Now, those sectors, though, We currently have 60 programs in 15 SHISM sectors. Examples of sectors: arts and culture, business, construction, manufacturing, social justice, transportation. So all types of things, all different levels of pathways, and students earn a red seal on their diploma should they choose to take this program, which will allow them to take a bundle of courses, specific training certifications related to that area, as well as summer co-op opportunities that fit within this as well. SHISM and OYAP are often paired together and sometimes confused. OYAP is a more specific Ontario Youth Apprenticeship program, and that's when you actually work during your high school time towards becoming a certified journey person in a particular area, whether it's chef, baker, hairstylist, auto body person, and students have the ability to work towards that accreditation while they're still in our high schools. And students are able to, in grades 11 and 12, switch between schools should they want to go to a regional OYAP program. They can also take OYAP Light by staying within their own school and simply doing one of co-op in the area that they're interested within OYAP. They don't have to take the full program and move to a different school. Dual credit refers to a dual credit partnership between the school board and local community colleges. So in Halton, we partner with Mohawk, Humber, and Sheridan, and students are able to take credits that are earning them college credit as well as high school credit. In many cases, this is in relation to a level 1 apprenticeship, but there's also opportunities for them to experience college credit in a variety of different areas. And you can see on that slide that we've had an increase in the number of students participating in this in the last number of years. Co-op exists in all of our schools. You don't have to be in one of those pathways programs to take co-op. Any student has the ability to take co-op, and co-op is open level, and you can take it regardless of what pathway you're on. You can, in the past, you would take it in a 3 or 4 credit package, and it had to tie back to courses that you had already taken. New, as of this year, we have standalone co-op, and co-op now actually has its own curriculum document within the ministry. So we have something called DCO, which is a standalone co-op credit, and that is new as of this year. But every single one of our schools has co-op, and every single one of our schools offers students the opportunity to explore careers in an area specific to them and their particular individual interests. E-learning does not exist in all school boards across the province. E-learning is Halton e-learning. There was a time in Halton where we used to dabble in e-learning, whereas when students participated, they would take courses that were not ours. We did not create them. They were not our teachers teaching them or anything else. Over the years, we have built a very healthy and hearty e-learning program. All of our students are taking the courses through our teachers. And so your child's teacher could be teaching in that school, but teaching 2 online courses as well as part of their assignment for the year. We're quite proud of our e-learning opportunities for students because students will take e-learning for a whole variety of reasons. You're not necessarily taking it because you're at risk. You could be taking it because you have a timetable conflict, you have extracurricular pressures. It just is making it much easier for students to be able to take what they need and have it fit their personalized learning agenda. Credit intervention, self-paced learning. Again, in all of our schools, and every single school has staff attached to self-paced learning. as well as credit intervention. And credit intervention refers to credit rescue, which is an before the fact. So we rescue that credit if you happen to be in risk, and credit recovery if things didn't go the right way. And we don't want you to repeat the entire credit. We would like you to just repeat those areas where perhaps you were ill and you didn't do well or you didn't understand. And so again, from when all of us sat in school, school has changed a great deal over the years, and it's very much personalized and differentiated for individual student need. And student success really wraps around that notion of, supporting all students, supporting some students, supporting few students. So you think of it as a real pyramid of intervention, but the interventions are there for all students, regardless of what their needs happen to be. Transitions refers to those transition programs for our elementary students who are moving into our secondary schools. And it refers to programs. In Halton, we currently have 2 programs, LEAP and Access, as well as all of the lower T transition supports that are out there as well, which include high school tours and pathways nights, student shadow dates, all sorts of events that have our elementary students getting into high schools in order to make that transition more supported. And in fact, Principal Proto and Joel Zinn talked about some of those things that they were doing when they presented earlier this evening. LEAP, as one of our transition programs, LEAP is a regional program that is specific to students on an essential level pathway, which means that they would be going to one of our composite schools, so schools that offer locally developed and essential level programming. And so these students, because they are coming together from a wider area, cluster together in their grade 8 year at the high school, so they don't go to their elementary school for grade 8. They go to the local composite high school, so Georgetown in the north, and CK in Milton, White Oaks in Oakville, and Robert Bateman in Burlington. And these students do 4 credits, and they earn these credits ahead of time, and then they work on literacy and numeracy. And you can see that, as our slide shows us, when Robert Bateman it transitions, we are creating 2 programs, at one above the QE and one below the QE in Burlington for LEAP students. Access, on the other hand, Access was designed for students in grade 8 who are on an applied pathway. Applied pathways exist in every single one of our schools, so that's very different than our regional composite schools. And as such, we are reimagining our Access program. So it currently operates in Burlington as a partnership between Rolling Meadows and MM, as well as in Acton between MSB and Acton. And as of next year, in order to serve students who are in risk in all of our schools across the system, we are reimagining that program. And it is being repackaged, and it will have access to all school communities for all students through some centrally held funds that will enable all students to have some of those supports that help in those transitions. Elementary schools that have 7 and 8s in them also have student success staffing. They have student success teachers, and their job is to help transitions to high school, support in-risk students, and to help with the education and career life planning, which is very similar to the job of what student success is doing at our high schools as well. Last year, we were fortunate in April to have a gift of additional student success staffing at the elementary level from the ministry. And we allocated that staffing in a way so as not to disrupt all of our schools, because although we were very thankful for the fact that it also came after our staffing dates, and we already had all of our staffing in place. And so we didn't want to go back and disturb all of our elementary schools. So we committed to using a multifaceted matrix, and we disturbed 14 of our schools in adding this additional staff, and we let everyone know that for this coming year, we would be applying that matrix to all of our elementary schools. And so we will see a shift in our elementary student success staffing for next year. Targeted coaching is also part of student success. So coaches are staff members who work with other teachers to co-plan and to co-teach. And our coaches are assigned to secondary schools, much like they are in elementary. There are elementary coaches as well. But in secondary and student success, they're used based on EQAO results and where we think we have some targeted work that needs to be done in the areas of literacy and numeracy achievement. Re-engagement goes to the few. So those who we aren't able to support while they're here and who are really struggling because they need to be re-engaged. Well, they may be school leavers would be their worst case scenario, and those that need the greatest number of support. Because the goal of student success is the graduation of 100% of students. And here in Halton, we're very fortunate that our graduation rate is over 90% as by provincial measure. However, that's not good enough. Good enough is 100%, where every single child leaves this system with a plan that works for them and a place to go, whether that's community, workplace, apprenticeship, college, university. And so re-engagement supports our 14 to 21-year-olds who are either on the cusp of leaving or who have already left prior to earning a certificate or an OSSD. And they're supported primarily through our regional re-engagement counselor, as well as two specific programs, one in the north and one in the south, and we call those REP, Regional Re-Engagement. And this is just part of that wraparound support to help those students. It ties into another group called SAL, and I look at Vice Chair Al Harrison because she has been sitting as our trustee rep on the SAL committee. And SAL is a committee that provides and really facilitates and allows opportunities for those students who have had the greatest challenges, those students who have gone through that whole pyramid of intervention and are still saying, I don't want to be in school. And this is, again, a support for them to say, if we allow them to participate in SAL, Supervised Alternative Learning, this can include going to school part-time and taking counseling part-time, could be working part-time. It could also be doing full-time employability skills readiness programs. But social worker and school representative, usually the vice principal, come together in front of the SAL committee, and they tell us why the student needs our approval to do this, and the SAL committee then makes the decisions. And you can see in the graph that's up there the incredible increase in the number of students who've gone through the SAL process. And that, I don't want anyone to be misled in thinking that is because there's this, in the last couple years, this huge increase in the number of students who are wanting to leave. Rather, that graph really reflects a difference in philosophy and approach to what students were doing. Because SAL is just one of the options available to school boards, and if we looked around the province, we would see that it is embraced in varying degrees around the province. We hadn't been embracing it as much, but we're certainly, as you can see, embracing it as an opportunity more in the present here and now. So, in conclusion, through the report and through the full slide deck that was shared with you, I hope that I've been able to provide with you an overview of the student success supports, the people, the places, the programs that exist to support students in grades 7 through 12, whether they are currently struggling in any degree whatsoever. If there are ever any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. In conclusion, student success is truly at the heart of student success. So if there's any questions, I would happily take those now.
Okay, Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you for all of the information. Through you, Madam Chair. Two things. Firstly, With respect to e-learning, are the students enrolled in that strictly HDSB students, or I understand there's other boards like AMDEC, Avon-Maitland, that has offered their programs provincially, for example, and are there any merits to that for us?
Through the chair to the vice chair. Currently, e-learning in Halton is for Halton students. That doesn't mean that we couldn't expand our program, but when we began this journey, we made a conscious decision to have slow, purposeful, measured growth. We recognized that there was a need within our own community, but we also didn't want to grow too big and too fast and not have control of what we wanted this to be. And so currently, we do not have a program that's opened across the province, but we have had conversations about what that might look like for us in the future. So it's not being ruled out. It's simply just hasn't been part of the slow measured plan.
Trustee Collard?
Thank you. I'm very happy to see the expansion of the Access program. I think it's a wonderful program, and it should be in every school. So I'm very pleased to see that that's happening. And I also noted that while Burlington has 2 composite schools, Oakville only has 1. And I'm wondering if there are plans for a second composite school in Oakville to accommodate the great numbers of students in that part of our region. And my last question dovetails into Vice Chair Al Harrison's. If we were to open our online learning, would we receive extra funding because our teachers would be teaching additional students?
Through the chair to Trustee Collard, and I'll try to get all of those within there. I was looking over at Superintendent Zonnefeld when you were talking about Oakville, and I don't think I'm letting the cat out of the bag in any way, but we've been having conversations in Oakville about an expansion of that program, and we have been exploring whether we would be able to build a north and a south site there as well. So stay tuned for more information on that. E-learning funding, yes, there would definitely be funding that would come because of it's measured on numbers and students who are taking it. But there's also a cost to that as well in terms of right now we work through a model where we say that with minimal exception, our teachers are able to teach up to 2 online courses. Some of the other boards that have focused heavily on e-learning have created sites where those teachers are e-learning only and they're in a separate location or not as part of an overall school community. And this notion of learning and school community, whether you're doing it face-to-face or on a computer, is very much important to us as part of what we're doing, and we don't want to lose sight of that. So in terms of what we would gain by doing it one way, we want to be very careful that we're not losing what's at the heart of our own philosophy. And I think there were 3. Did I miss one?
Oh, I was just congratulating you on
well,
access.
Thank you. I would like to clarify, though, with the access piece. Access being reimagined does have a change. So currently, the access program, as it does exist at MSB, has the students going over to the high school, and they are earning credit. That part will not be continuing because we cannot continue the double staffing of elementary and secondary staff at the same time. So while we're not able to scale that part, we're working very hard to and concertedly to set up a baseline of what is an accepted transitions program, and there's more coming later this month through Associate Director Bogue, who will be sharing a report on the 23rd. But that we're also offering students Reach Ahead credits now. We started that just this past year in summer for the very first time for grade 8s who could reach ahead, and we're looking at providing opportunities that way. So our opportunities will be non-credit based.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to make the comment that it's very impressive to see the breadth and depth and variety of programming available to support our students and ensure student success right in the system. So it's Thank you very much for this report tonight. With a view towards encouraging and supporting student participation in these various student success programs being offered, could you please comment on the transportation support currently being provided to students? I would think that some students may have to travel to get to some programs that are not in their current community. Are we helping them to get to where they need to get to?
Through the chair to Trustee Gray. So each one has a slightly different answer, but I will run through the programs for you. So SHSM and OYAP are generally paired, and at one point there was yellow school bus transportation to all of those programs, but a yellow school bus shortage meant that we moved to bus passes, public transit passes that are provided to students in the south because we have public transit here. So it's still by yellow school bus in the north, but not in the south. We did have an issue, and I appreciate that you're in the north, and we did have one issue in the north with regard to some transportation, and one of it isn't so much the program, it has to do with the fact that it's the coordination of busing schedules. So for instance, if you live in Milton and you choose to take a program that's regionally offered at Georgetown, we get you on your way home from Georgetown to CK, but then does it coordinate with what time your bus was leaving CK to get you home? And that's where we sometimes run into problems. So yes, we're providing transportation, but I wouldn't want to say that we weren't having a few hiccups with it every now and then. Dual credit transportation is provided for students who are participating in that. Co-op, there is no transportation to student placements. That's part of negotiating your placement. You have to choose something that you can get yourself to, and we have students who do it close to their community school, and we have students who choose some of our downtown Toronto options that are there. It's all dependent. LEAP, because LEAP is essential and it's the composite schools, transportation is provided because those buses are running across the communities in order to get students to the composite schools. REP, the regional re-engagement, does not have transportation attached to it. In fact, we just recently moved the REP program in the south. It moved from MMR to Burlington Central, and one of the motivating factors, it's new at Burlington Central this year, is the fact that we're hoping that it's going to be easier accessed for students across Burlington and the south to get there. And although there isn't transportation provided, we do have abilities. We work with social workers, et cetera, and family circumstance, and angel funds, and all those other things, again, for bus passes, transit passes that we give out through that process, or sometimes taxis as well. So I think I've hit all of the programs there. Okay.
Trustee Oliver?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Superintendent Hunt Gibbons. Thank you for this very interesting and educational presentation, and very impressive, as Trustee Gray commented, highlighting the breadth and scope of the programs that we have under our Student Success umbrella and supporting all students. I think the significant success and gains made with student success, with a provincial 14% increase in grad rates and our very impressive 91% grad rate in our school board, highlights the importance of this umbrella of strategies in ensuring that each student can explore and enhance their potential, thrive, and succeed. And therefore, I think it highlights the diligence that's required on our part in ensuring adequate funding, resourcing of staff, and staff training and support. So again, I'm very impressed and excited about how education has evolved over the last couple of decades. And I look forward to supporting student success and ensuring that it continues to support our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Reynolds?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm certainly grateful that we have a variety of opportunities that engage individual learners here at the Halton District School Board. And in your report, I know that lots of effort has been made to increase the interest in recruitment, specifically to the SHSM programs, which I think is also great. But I note that some of the SHISM completion rates are low. And I was wondering, my question is, does the ministry have expectations on completion rates? And what efforts are being done to retain and graduate more students in the SHISM areas?
Through the chair to Trustee Reynolds. Yes, completion rates are our greatest challenge in SHISM, not only in Halton, but across the province. And they are very much tracked and monitored by the province. Part of that, young people change their mind. And so that is certainly built into those numbers. They've tried something and they've decided it's not for them and it's not completed. And that would be a perfectly acceptable reason not to complete something. Where we would be concerned about a completion rate, though, would be that they didn't have an opportunity because they couldn't find a co-op placement in that area. And that would be something that would be upsetting to us, because then we own that and not them. And so completion rates and footprint are the two different things that are measured in SHISM. And in the report, you saw the chart where I put all of the schools together in terms of their footprint as well as their completion rates. And that is something that impacts our funding, because the province, when it funds for SHISM, does so based on the completion rate of your program. So programs with high completion rates get greater amounts of funding than those that have struggled with their completion rates, because they're saying, pick up your socks and figure out why you don't have that program that's there. So we monitor that all the time. We have a team of people. We have also hired some what we call SHISM coaches, where we've taken people with experience in SHISM in our schools and we release them for one section to work in their communities with staff and students. Both OYAP and SHISM are very paperwork heavy programs, and thus if you don't have that paperwork completed or young people don't submit, then we're missing a funding opportunity there, or they're missing the opportunity to get accredited for something that they did. And so our Pathways team works very hard to try and take those completion rates as to 100% where possible. And sometimes we actually have to make the difficult decision to say that regardless of our efforts, that program is not working in that location, and then we will phase it out. We would never ever cut the program such that a student would not be able to complete it, but we have phased programs out in the past. One, to relocate them, or two, to just say that's not simply reflecting student voice in Halton.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I went back on the speakers list because my questions were unrelated to each other. Firstly, I just want to, recognize that behind all of these programs are staff, and firsthand from working with the SAL group, that their hearts and heads are fully in these jobs, which are often not easy. So I'm very appreciative of that piece. My question is about credit intervention and self-paced learning, and whether there's consistency across the board in what those look like. For example, credit recovery, is it the same in all of our schools? Are there guidelines or that sort of thing?
So through the chair to Vice Chair Al Harrison. So those are provincial programs. Credit recovery, credit rescue, self-paced learning are all student success strategies across the province. Some boards have embraced them more than others, for sure, but there are guidelines and policy memorandums attached to all of them around things that can and cannot be done in terms of who is eligible to recover a credit, what has to be done to recover a credit, what credit rescue can and cannot look like. In terms of measurement, the best measure of how a student is doing to determine that we rescue something is the 5-week reporting cycle that exists in high school. And so 5th week reporting, midterm, 15th week. Those of you with teenagers will know that in your house, 15th week reports are probably called in danger reports. And I look to our student trustees and I see smiles because they're like, oh yeah, I recognize that. So kids will call them in danger of failing reports or in danger reports, and if there's any question that you wouldn't secure a credit, you're flagged, and that is a report that is sent out in high school, and that then triggers a whole series of supports, perhaps professional nagging from their perspective, but credit rescue a student can be referred by the school team, by a staff member, they can self-refer, and it might take the form of giving up their lunch and coming in, or they may be withdrawn from a class and working on those things. And then in terms of, if we had two different students who let's say had missed their history credit at two different schools, what they were doing to recover their credit would look different based on the individual report of what they missed in the first place. Because the philosophy behind it is that you only redo that which you didn't do successfully in the first place. And that report that is done on each student is also filed in their OSR as well. And so that credit recovery piece is in OSRs at this point.
Okay, since there's nobody else on the speakers list, I actually have a question. So with respect to the re-engagement portion of this presentation report, will there be any changes to these programs in light of the EPO or Educational Programs Other funding changes that were announced in December?
So Chair Grabentz is referring to the list of EPO, the funding announcement that came out right before the holidays, where they listed some government grants that were no longer going to exist and those that were going to. And one of them that was on that list of cuts, there were two specific to student success. One was called the Ensuring Equitable Access to PSC, which stands for Post-Secondary Education Opportunities. That one had been by application. So although we were sad to see that it wasn't renewed, we knew when we applied for it that that one only had an impact for 1 to 2 years, and it wasn't renewed. We knew that. And the person who was doing that work actually went back to their school in September, and we are working to ensure that we're ensuring that all students have equitable access to post-secondary education at all time. That one really shone the light on students in risk, so students who didn't have the family supports to get there, students who didn't see any value in anything after high school. The other one, the 12 plus EPO, I believe our chair is referring to, because it is specific to, it paid a portion of the re-engagement counselor's salary, and that's all it did across the province. It didn't pay the full salary of the re-engagement counselor, it paid a portion of that salary, and so that will certainly, from my presentation, you know that very much a big part of student success, and no comment by the ministry that that role would have to disappear, but a comment that we would have to look elsewhere during funding and budget process to make up that difference.
Go ahead, Director Miller.
And to Chair Grabentz, through Chair Grabentz to all trustees, in the director's report, for the purposes of public digestion, I will be listing the EPOs that have been canceled and those that we continue to get, so that the public will see that. So.
Okay, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. It's great to see all the initiatives and programs that we do across the board. It is unfortunate that we are losing funding for some important work that we do, and I hope that we find funds in other ways to help re-engage our students, that because education, it sets you up for life, and we all know that, and we don't want to see students fall by the wayside.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're up to approval of consent agenda action items and receipt of consent agenda information items. So before I move forward on this, is anybody looking to pull any reports or any of the information items in the consent agenda? Okay, so I'm going to then just move forward with the regular motion. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda and receipt the consent agenda items for, January the 9th, 2019. Trustee Reynolds, seconded by Trustee Daniele. We have no discussion? Okay, so all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are now up to our ratification action items. Vice Chair Al Harrison, do we have any business from private session that requires approval?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you very much. We have no action items for this evening, so we are now up to communications to the board. First off, we have item number 5.1, student trustee reports. Trustee Clark and Meng, we are looking forward to hearing your report.
Yeah. So thank you very much. So before I'd like to begin, I hope everyone had a very good winter break and a happy new year to everyone. And so I'll just be talking about what we've done with the last student trustee meeting and the future student trustee meeting, and Trustee Clark will go into the details of executive committee update. So the last student Senate meeting, the Senate reviewed the proposed constitution / terms of reference, and the Senate gave a clear consensus on our terms of reference document. And as we all know, the Student Senate is officially designated as a committee of the board. So that means that it will now be called the terms of reference. So the upcoming Student Senate meeting will be January 15th, which is next Tuesday at right here. And we'll be having Director Miller attending as a special guest during our joint session. And also another update is the Mental Health Committee, and a couple of interested student senators have assembled a self-directed committee to advise the Student Senate and student trustees as to the issues facing the students in the board in regards to mental health. And now I'll pass on to Trustee Clark.
Thank you very much, Trustee Meng. So I'm just going to report some of the stuff that the executive committee has done. We tried to get a call together, but we didn't have quorum. So I'll just report on one of the cool things that we decided to do before we started the new year. So in our previous executive committee meeting, it was decided that it would be a good idea if the executive committee, as well as the student trustees, asked the student senators for feedback on how it was going. How was the student senate performing? How are we performing in our roles? And I just kind of wanted to share some of the responses that we got from student senators. So most of the questions we asked students to rate performance from 1 to 10. So it was just sort of a simple quantitative thing that we could look at. So the first question was, how do the student senators rate their experience in the student senate so far? And we found about 82% said it was excellent. Do you feel meetings were divided productively? 81% said that they were in approval. How well are each of the student trustees doing in their role? 86% between the two of us. How well the executive committee doing? 78%. How comfortable do you feel coming to student trustees with questions? 85%. And we also had a whole bunch of open-ended questions and suggestions from student senators, which we'll be taking into the new year, trying to make sure that everyone feels as included as possible. And we will do another survey in the next 6 months, so when we're ending our term, just to see how how we, worked off of what they had recommended for us, and we're aiming for at least 90% approval rate from all the student senators. So the executive committee, we're going to sit down, we're going to take a look, how can we adapt what we've been doing, how can we make sure more people are comfortable with what we're doing. And that is our short little student trustee report. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to let us know.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you, and just a reminder to all trustees that they're welcome to attend any student trustee meeting, and it's really, really interesting to sit in the back of the room and just listen to some of the amazing things these young people are doing. So I'd strongly encourage you, if you can, come Tuesday at 6 o'clock.
Great, thank you very much. That's a great report. Next, we are up to action items for January the 23rd, 2019. First is number 521, Striking Committee, Report 19003 on page 32 of your board package. I'm actually looking for a motion to suspend the rules because I understand that there's work that needs to be done by some of these committees. Thank you, Trustee Collard. Is there someone to second the motion? Trustee Reynolds, thank you. Okay. Is there any discussion at all on suspending the rules to do this? Okay, I don't see any. Oh, thank you. Okay, so all those in favor of suspending the rules? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So I'm going to read the motion. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the trustee committee appointments as outlined in report 19003. Moved by Trustee Collard, seconded by Trustee Garrett. Any discussion at all? Oh. Okay, Trustee Collard.
Oh, I thought Vice Chair Harrison beat me in there.
Yes, things happen.
Yes, things happen. I wanted to thank you very much for updating the report, and I was wondering if we could perhaps have an update about the SEAC rep positions as well. And I was wondering if the actual motion should say as amended, since the report itself was amended since the package came out.
The actual appendice was amended rather than the report itself.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know I wasn't clear, so.
Okay, and I do believe Vice Chair Harrison was actually going to speak to the other portion. So I'll just.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and I'm not speaking on behalf of, but the trustees who are on SEAC, I believe, have agreed that Trustees Shuttleworth and Oliver will be the voting members for this year, and Trustee Garrett and myself will be the alternates, in that we will look to rotate that around as time goes on, as per last term's practice.
Okay, great. So, Vice Chair Harrison, do you still need to be on the speakers list? Okay, I'll clear it then. Okay, so seeing no more speakers on the speakers list. Okay, I'm just letting the people know that Manager Gortmaker has made note of those changes to the appendices in the minutes. Okay. So moving to the vote, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are up to the next item, which is number 522, North Burlington Elementary Boundary Review, Report 19006, page 36, or close to it, in the board package. Superintendent Blackwell and Superintendent Salmini, welcome.
Thank you. We have a boundary review that was a little bit different than some of the boundary reviews you may be aware of. For those of you that are returning, you will remember that we had a triangle up in Halton that we had no development in it at the time, and we directed students to Clarksdale for French immersion and English, and then their pathways followed. This process is a little different than some of the other boundary reviews you'll experience this year, in that there are no people living in these areas. The areas that we're talking about, there are two developments that are coming into Alton Village. Alton, you'll see those two little, looks like a figure 8 at the top of your screen. One is Thomas Alton Boulevard, and the other one is Valera Road. One is to be occupied October 2021, and the other is October 2022. So we're well in advance of any construction. We also have the Evergreen community, which is the top right of your screen, and that is bounded by Tremaine Road and Dundas. And both of these areas, again, its occupancy is October 2021. Both of these areas, we feel that it's prudent as a board to direct those areas to the appropriate schools at this time. For those of you that remember in the Parr, we looked at secondary schools in Burlington, and the Evergreen community has been directed to MM Robinson for the secondary. This is an elementary school boundary review. So why do we need to do a boundary review? As you'll refer back to that figure 8, currently those students would go to Alton Village, and we know that the Alton Village projections for the next 7 or 8 years, they'll be over capacity by at least 200 students. There's no room. The other area, we have identified the secondary plan for that, so we thought it would be prudent at this time to provide the elementary school as well. The other thing is that in the Northeast Burlington boundary review, number 4, that was the Alton Village boundary review in 2011, the Evergreen area was called to be determined, so we thought it would be time to determine. And these are the current boundaries. You'll see that figure 8 right now for English program would occur in that current boundary going to Alton Village. As I just mentioned, there is no room at Alton Village, and it's continued to be over capacity for the next 8 years, and Evergreen has not been determined. And the French immersion, the figure 8 and the surrounding area, this is existing. FI students that are entering the French immersion program go to Orchard Park, so there is busing that is leaving that area and going to Orchard Park. So as we do with boundary reviews, and this was a recommendation, our long-term accommodation plan, we look at areas, and the concern here was around the Alton Village population and the knowing that the new developments are coming in place. And as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to provide that information for homeowners and also to include in this year's projections. Here's the Alton Village data, and you'll see the percentage utilization all the way to through 2024. Doesn't seem that far away, but we do have another opportunity that we needed to look for. So as I mentioned, there are no families that are living within the study area, so that we had the opportunity to go through a process that was a little bit faster than a normal boundary review. We are not moving students. All students that are enrolled in their schools and elementary schools right now would not be impacted. No one's moving schools. So that's why this process is a little bit faster than some of the other processes. And you'll see the timelines there. So we're bringing this report to you for information, for information this evening, and then you will make a decision on it in 2 weeks' time. The boundary review process that we engaged in, we looked at North Burlington Elementary Schools. We were, so part of this process, we still include the trustees from the impacted areas. Trustee Grabentz was on the committee, as well as Trustee Collard and General Manager Ranzella and Superintendent Salmini. These are the ERAs that we looked at, and you'll note in the report, one of the reference to ERAs later on in terms of informing the community mentioned these ERAs to start off with, and then it says ERA 5 and 6. There's a typo, so that will be adjusted so that's accurate. So as part of our process, planning provides us with a variety of scenarios. We looked at various scenarios, and we look at the criteria. The committee determines the criteria, and this is very similar criteria across our boundary reviews. We want to make sure that all of those bullets are considered. We look at transportation, routes, and we look at we look at keeping cohorts together, and we look at other criteria, but this is the criteria that the committee really made their decision on. And as we looked at each scenario, we were able to say that many of them didn't fit these criteria, and so we got down to two options 1 and 4. And just for your information, some of the time when we're looking at these reviews, we look at the busing distances and we look at the impact on transportation. If you recall earlier on, I mentioned that figure 8 is in an area where there's busing already to Orchard Park in that area. And even though the distance for elementary is 1.6 kilometers, because those areas are north of Dundas and the schools that they would feed into are south of Dundas, transportation has said that's much too busy an area for elementary students to cross. So all of these distances, all of the schools and the options we looked at, they would be bused. Option 1 was the first option that we looked at. It's very hard to notice, but the English program pathway, the figure 8 right now is in yellow. And it would mean that the English program students in that figure 8 would go to Orchard Park, as well as Orchard Park for French immersion. And as you know from earlier on, the whole area at the top is already going to Orchard Park for French immersion. So that's an existing bus route. The Evergreen community at this time in this option would go to John William Boyce, both for English and for French immersion. This is just a chart that shows where they would go for elementary school, where they would go for secondary school, and as you know, the secondary Halton development, they would still feed into Hayden if they're an English program, and they would go to MM Robinson for French immersion program. The Boyce is the same. It would go to MM Robinson for English and French. In option 4, the only difference here is the English program would go to Orchard Park. The French immersion from Evergreen and the English from Evergreen would go to Charles R. Baudouin. And it's nice to have some historical pieces on the committee. Trustee Gebrents had remembered the boundary review, and we looked at some of the pieces around a previous boundary review with Alton Village. And one of the commitments was to look at, I'll probably show it better here. You'll see in the top screen, there's a turquoise area that's to the left of Walker's Line right here. Currently that's catchment goes to Florence Mears, and it goes to a different site for French immersion. At the time of the boundary review for Alton Village, there was a commitment to look at the trends in French immersion. Should Charles R. Baudouin become a school that is easing in enrollment, we would look at availability to put the entire cohort for French immersion at Charles R. Baudouin. That's not what the purpose of this boundary review is, but it's something that we talked about to continue to monitor, and we also realize that we're only in our first year of French immersion in grade 2, so we want to make sure that the LTAP has the appropriate data to make the projections beyond 1 year of data. Just another way of looking at the schools. And at the end of the day, we did look, even though the options look very close, we did want to look, the director's recommendation is option number 1, given what I've just said about the French immersion and the promise to look at that repatriation on the west side of Walker's Line in terms of the French immersion. Again, at this time, there are no families in those communities, and it establishes the same bus routes that exist in the Orchard community for the French immersion in English, and then it's right across the highway, basically, on the Dundas Highway 5 for John William Boyce. So we'll take any questions.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Superintendents Blackwell and Salmini for their hard work on this. I know that it was one of the more difficult boundary reviews that they've been experienced in. And so I'm not tongue-in-cheek, but I do thank you very much for this, because I know this will be seen as a community as a good thing, and it helps keep students with their siblings and with their neighbors. So these are good things, and I'm very pleased that this came together so quickly.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, I also wanted to say thank you very much. I know that people who live in Alton Village will be relieved, because they have, ever since, especially the Valera and Thomas Alton projects were announced, they've been almost frantic in thinking that there's going to be a major boundary review. Their children will be thrown out of the school. So this should bring some relief to them. Thank you so much. Okay, so next we have two information items. One of them we've actually already dealt with. The first is number 521, revised estimates, report number 19000 on page 41 of your board package. Welcome, Superintendent Veerman.
Thank you. Through the chair, this report provides an update to the initial budget that was passed in June. It is a second report as part of our ministry reporting cycle, and it again reflects information that was captured based on enrollment as of October 31st. And for the new trustees, the two reporting dates are October 31st and March 31st. So after we have had an opportunity to take a look at our revised enrollment, we also look at other revenues and expenditures that may have changed since the budget was approved. And the details in the report do provide updates with respect to enrollment. So as an example, from the initial projections for enrollment, overall, a small decrease from our initial projections, although they do vary between elementary and secondary. That does have staffing implications in addition to changes that may be required as a result of average class size compliance. And based on information that has been prepared on Appendix 1, we have identified, again, both revenues and expenditure changes. Because of the fluctuation in enrollment, a small increase in our projected grants, a small increase in other income, and that is also resulting in a decrease in expenditures. So at this point in the year, although it is early in the year, we're projecting a year-end surplus of about $2.5 million. However, there's still a lot of year left to go, and that may change accordingly. The remainder of the package provides details that is based on how we submit information to the ministry, and then also additional information based on, again, also the format that we present the budget that gives more information with respect to each of the revenues and each of the expenditures. And at this point, I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
There are no questions. You've obviously written an excellent report. So thank you so much for bringing it to the board. Okay, next is number 54, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Okay, so next is the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Grevence, and I will start with, as it was brought up in the student success presentation. I'm just going to quickly list off, because this came out just prior to the winter break in December. EPOs are education programs other, and we expect to get some every year, and we were informed by the ministry last school year, that we could expect certain EPOs to come forward for this particular school year. As you all know, as you all are aware, there was an election in June. New government had to get its feet on the ground and determine what they were going to do with all these things, and certainly there was a learning period for the new government. And as a result, the EPOs were not coming in as they would have in the fall, and as they were all being reviewed by the government. And as a consequence, we as a board had to make a decision to carry on with some of those programs without the grant money from the ministry and find money from other sources or not. And so, as you are aware, we did get a list of EPOs that were sent to us in December, some of which have been canceled, some of which have been modified, some of which have been will continue as on. So I know the trustees have had this documentation, but I'm going to list them for the purposes of the public so that they're aware. So the EPOs, and the superintendents around the table can elaborate if you need it. I don't know if we need that, but they can elaborate on them. So Innovation in Learning Fund was canceled. Daily Physical Activity was canceled. Teacher Learning and Leadership Program, the current ones are approved, but there will be no new approvals. Supporting Racialized Students was canceled. Physical Activity for Secondary Schools, canceled. Ensuring Equitable Access to Post-Secondary Education, as Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons spoke about, has been canceled. Speak Up grants, that's for students, has been canceled. Re-engagement 12 and 12 plus has been canceled. Indigenous Focused Collaborative Inquiry has been canceled. Those that have been continued, and I'm not going to go into the details here, that have been approved, because even though I've said they've been approved, we have not yet received the money for these, and some of them have been modified, and we have not been told what that modification is. So we're still awaiting to hear from the provincial government, from the Ministry of Education, on what those modifications are and or when we will receive the money. So the adult hybrid project has been approved, board leadership strategy approved, renewed math strategy, which is replaced by fundamentals in mathematics, human rights and equity advisors have been approved. For this board, it's a half staff member, which we will be dealing with shortly. Funding for online health and safety incident reporting system approved. Children and youth in care transportation supports approved. Well-being, safe, accepting, and healthy schools and mental health approved. Data collection, integration, and reporting approved. DAP closing in literacy grades 7 to 12. Experiential learning approved. Community use of schools, outreach coordinators approved. Mental health workers approved. Special education professional assessments approved. Culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy approved. Professional learning supports, EDFO represented by education workers approved. Again, some of these will have reduced amounts, but and there's a possibility that they may be prorated because we've been putting some of these in place because this is January and these monies would have come in September. So we have made some decisions based on not having them or whatever. So I'm open to questions on any of those, and the superintendents around the table can also respond if necessary. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next part of the report.
Thank you, Director Miller. We do have someone on the speakers list, Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to Director Miller. You've mentioned that the EPO decisions were late in arriving to the boards. Usually we would know by September, and as a consequence, our board decided to go forward with some of the programs. I'm wondering, now that we know the programs that have been canceled, how many had we already made expenditures for of all of the programs, and to what extent, and how will we recover or move forward now that we know that the funding has been removed from that we have started?
That's a longer answer. I think the best way to do that is we'll go through these and then I can provide that answer to all trustees in either a report or in the next one. I think it'd be easier to do that than do it off this way, because it's not as simple as saying this one we did and we took the money from here and so on, but I'll get back to all trustees with that answer. And is that okay? Is that acceptable, Trustee Gray? Okay, thanks.
There are no other questions.
The next part of the report, as trustees may or may not be aware, we have been doing a boundary review for the Northeast Oakville Elementary School. The boundary review is coming to a completion, and I want to publicly thank the Boundary Review Committee, which is comprised of parents up in the community from the different schools, along with the trustee co-chair, Trustee Collard, and the staff staff co-chair, John Pennyfather, Superintendent Pennyfather. Anyway, the public meeting, the scenarios have been developed, and the public meeting will be presented to the public at large on Thursday at White Oaks Secondary School. We have no idea how many numbers will be there. That Northeast Oakville area is exploding in terms of population, so I suspect it will be a very full meeting, and White Oaks will be filled to the rafters. The public needs to know we have expressed to them that the school has not been built, and the building has not commenced, and we've had questions from the community, we've had questions from the Boundary Review Committee, and we've had questions at this table around that. It was out to tender, and the tenders were received, and we have not received approval to accept the tender from the Ministry of Education. The tender for that, I believe, expired today, January 9th. However, the successful contractor, has agreed to extend their bid for an additional month. So I'm not sure if it's exactly to the February 9th date, but it's an additional month. We are currently working with the ministry to get approval of that. As trustees around the table are aware and the public's aware, the new school in Northeast Oakville is a repeat design of the Viola Desmond School in Milton, which opened fully to students yesterday, which was pretty cool. And the Viola Desmond School, we were given the same amount of money for Viola Desmond as we were for the Northeast Oakville School, yet the Northeast Oakville School, when it was costed out, was $2.5 million more expensive. And it's a repeat design, and indeed is actually a wee bit smaller than the Viola Desmond because of a child care area. So as you're aware, there's a challenge, but we're fortunate in that we're working with contractors who understand our situation and have extended their successful bid for an additional month for us to get approval from the ministry. So that's it on that. Unless there's a question, then I've got two more items, but I'm referring to superintendents around the table around that.
There are no questions.
Okay. The first one is, as you're aware, public health is dealing with immunization, and I'm going to refer to Superintendent Ruddock to give a report on that.
Thank you. Through Vice Chair Tracy L. Harrison to trustees. Last year, the Public Health Department implemented a suspension process for incomplete immunization records for students grades 9 through 12, so students this year who are born in 2001 to 2004. We have been working with public health since November to reduce the number of students on this year's suspension list. Because it was a new process last year, I don't recall the number we ended up suspending, but it was a very large number. The number we received in November this year was again large, almost about 2,000 students. We've been working with principals to communicate with families in November and December to work to reduce that number of students with incomplete immunization records. The suspension orders have been mailed out this month, or just at the beginning of this month, to 1,192 students across high schools in our system. The suspension begins on February 7th, so we still have just under a month to work with families to continue to reduce that number. Students at any point that they update their record with public health can be removed from that suspension list. And even if it's after February 7th, the suspension can be lifted almost immediately and students return to school. For students who don't update their immunization record, the suspension runs from February 7th to March 7th. The Public Health Department is also adding this year students that are born in 2010. So those are grade 3 students. And we know that for our parents of younger students, it will cause even more angst for suspension orders to be delivered to those young students. So we also asked principals in December to work with families who were on the initial at-risk list provided by Public Health to work with those families to get those immunization records resolved. We currently have 859 grade 3 students on the suspension list. Those new lists are being delivered to principals in the coming weeks, and we've asked principals to have very personal contact with those families, again, to work where our goal is to get to 0 for our grade 3 students, and I think we could get to that, if not very close to that, by supporting families through this process. That suspension period is March 17th to April 12th, so we have a little bit more time because that follows March break. And so we do hope that we reduce that number to near 0, if not 0. Thank you.
Through you, Chair Gribetz, just trustees need to be aware of that because even though it comes through public health and it's public health that directs us to suspend students, we all know when a student is suspended, the family may not know that it was public health that directed us to do so. And I know trustees in the past have had to field questions, queries, and parents rather unhappy that their child is suspended from school. So it is a difficult thing for our principals. Our principals in elementary schools work extremely hard to try to get this all resolved prior to suspensions. But last year we did have a significant number of students suspended, and I can tell you I heard about it, and I know many of you heard about it as well. So
we do have a couple of people on speakers list. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you through the chair. I had a lot of calls last time, and I'm wondering, in an effort to direct the communications, is it possible for trustees to get a copy of the communications that had gone out? That was my first request, and I kind of remember that if you could remind us the options that are available to parents to update the immunizations. I believe there was some online components, and if you could just reflect what were those accommodations put into place to make it as easy as possible for parents.
Through Vice Chair Al Harrison to Trustee Reynolds, I certainly can prepare some speaking points for you if you do get some phone calls as well as share the initial communication that we sent out. In fact, we started communicating with families in the summer to alert them to this process. Then we communicated again in the fall to remind them of this process. And then we've had very specific contact with families who are on the list in November and December. So I'll share the most recent kind of that personal email communication that we had with families. So I will do that in advance of those suspensions taking place. Most definitely. Families have a number of options at this point to report their immunizations via telephone, in person, or there's an online reporting mechanism. Once the suspension is in play, so for our secondary students after February 7th, in order to get the paper to return to school, families really do need to go in person to the region office to get that permission to go, that document that allows them back in school.
Okay, there's no more people on the speakers list.
Nope, just the last item. And the last item I'll refer to Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons is the kickoff of the robotics for the board.
Yes, sir. What an awesome day. So this past Saturday, and it's always the last Saturday of the winter holidays, we had 600 or so students over at New Street in the Brock Room for the annual kickoff for the first robotics challenge. So the fact that you get that many young people to come out, and staff and mentors and parents, and to give up holiday time to come in and kick off robotics is a huge testament to just how engaged they are in FIRST Robotics and the Robotics Challenge. If you're not familiar, and especially to our new trustees, I'm going to keep sending you invitations to all of these events because they're wonderfully exciting. Robotics competition is like rock'em sock'em robots. It's a phenomenal challenge, and the challenge is unveiled across North America at the same time, and that's why we all have to be together on the Saturday. So there's a big lead up to this, and Trustee Gray and Chair Gerbans were both there for this, and there are teasers that come throughout the morning, and then they unveil the challenge across North America at the same time. This year's challenge is deep space. It has an interesting aspect in the arena where the robots will have to deal with sandstorms and the inability to communicate, and they will have to be putting cargo on cargo ships and all the rest while their opposing team is doing the exact same thing. So now our robotics teams and our 10 different teams that are up and running this year will all be busy building because they have until bag and tag day, and after that day in February they may not touch their robot again, and now it is going to compete in the varying events. And so once we have the list of which schools are going to which events, I will send those out to all of you so that you are aware of them and you're willing to travel as far as you would like to go because they do go quite far in their robotics challenges. But it was a wonderful day, and I do thank our trustees for coming out to support, and I extend the invitation to anyone else to join us at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the end of your report. Okay, wonderful. So next is communications from the chair, and I would just, we've had, of course, last month, we put forth a motion to let the community know about the delays going on with regards to the builds in North Oakville, South Milton, as well as the renovations that are happening in Burlington with respect to the Parr. And Vice Chair Harrison and I, as well as some other trustees, have been out and about, and trying to get the attention of the government, as well as raising awareness among our colleagues in different municipalities, et cetera. So just to let you know that we have met with, talked with staff of all the Halton MPPs. We have taken the Northeast Oakville, the MPP responsible for that area, F.E. Triantafilopoulos, to view Viola Desmond Public School, which is the same school design that will be going to Northeast Oakville. We did that in December when the children weren't in there. Vice Chair Harrison and I met with Regional Chair Gary Carr, as well as Mayor Rob Burton and some staff from Marion Mead Ward in Burlington. We have met as well with councillors in Burlington and Milton and in Oakville. And we have been trying to get an audience with the Minister of Education, and we have heard nothing back. We would really like the minister to return our call. We would like a meeting with her. So that's where things stand at this point. There are still other appointments that are set up, and we're going to continue to run through them. Vice Chair Harrison and I have developed some charts that clearly show the need for the schools in the areas that we need built, and I can post those someplace if we can. I wanted to ask the two presentations this evening, would they be available online at all for constituents? Thank you very much. And now we're up to committee reports. Trustee Amos?
Since we just passed the striking committee report, I'm assuming that all the leaders of all the different committees will be informed of all the changes to the committees and the trustee representatives so that they will be contacted by those committees?
Yeah, the senior staff are aware of who all they are, and they will be reaching out to the trustees to let them know when the committees are meeting and so on. Yeah, senior staff, you heard me, right?
Okay. Seeing no other committee reports, any trustee questions and comments? Okay, Trustee Garretts.
I just want to mention that Trustee Daniele and I went to Viola Desmond yesterday to watch the young smiling faces as they entered the new school. It was truly magical, really. The staff were so stoked and so happy to be there, and they just got the kids all wound up. The unique thing that I see with Viola Desmond is that their boundary fence is super close to all their neighbors. And we could literally see, it was very early in the morning, we could literally see the people peeking out their blinds and and it may have been the sound system too. Yeah. But it was very exciting, and I'm going to be going over with Superintendent Newton on Friday for an official tour, but it's exciting to finally see these kids in their school, and it's great for the other 3 schools that now have all their real estate back.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that I received probably 4 emails tonight from the community asking if there was any news on the tender closing. So thank you to the director for your report. I'm going to share a tweet and an email out so that people will know, and hope that we will hear something from the ministry soon, because while we did get an extension, it's going to disappear quickly if we don't. I know we'll get lots of questions on Thursday around the boundary review and the different scenarios they're going to be asking when the school's going to be built. So we need to address that, I believe.
From one.
Sure, go ahead.
Through your chair, Grevance, to Trustee Amos, what I didn't say was we have resubmitted to the ministry a redesign as per the request, so we should.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So hopefully we'll hear sometime soon. And I also wanted to invite all my fellow trustees to the boundary review on Thursday, so you can hear what the community's saying. And it's at White Oaks. It starts at 7 o'clock, and you can see the different scenarios that have been developed, and there could be more developed depending on what the community's input is. But if you're available or want to, you can come that evening.
Thank you. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. I have 2 questions for the director. Now that the consultation on education reform has been completed by the ministry, I'm wondering if there's any update on perhaps will we see any outcome of what they're finding out? I know they just closed, but we were sort of hoping to have something, I think, for spring, and I don't know if they're still on track. My second question is actually, I'm going to say it is a result of the Parr. We had a really good update this morning on some of the changes, but I'm wondering, one of the outcomes was we had a daycare that left Pearson, and I was really, I've seen some media pieces of what they're doing with their daycare, and I was just hoping that we could have an update on maybe even a tour of the new daycare system and the elementary school.
Well, through your chair, Grevance, to Trustee Reynolds, I'll take the first one, and then Superintendent Podrebarek will take the one around the daycare. No, we haven't heard anything from the province around their educational reform and their consultations. I know they had 72,000 entries, I guess is the way to describe it, into their consultation. Not next week, the following week, we have our annual directors meeting code, which is council of all directors in Ontario, Catholic, public, French Catholic. And I know the trustees also have their provincial meeting as well. So I suspect we will hear something at those two meetings next week. But to this point, we haven't heard anything. And as with respect to the daycare, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Padre.
I did a tour of the new childcare at Brant Hills the week before Christmas. I showed up the same day as Santa, actually, which is great. And it's beautiful. They're in. There's nice signage up in Brant Hills for Pearson Childcare. They're still going on the same name. Supervisor took us through a tour of the facility. They're very happy. The board is very happy there. They see it as a very viable new location and did not voice any concerns at all to us. So it's been a really positive move. They've been operating since about mid-October in the new site and we're at Pearson. So they did a bit of bridging, but it's been very positive. It's beautiful. And if someone would like to go and see it someday, I'd be happy to take you over.
Thank you. That's exciting to hear. I would love to go.
Through your chair of events to Trustee Reynolds, rather than do it that way, Superintendent Podrebarek, why don't you put an invitation out, set a date, put an invitation out for trustees, and whoever can make it, and they all do it at the same time, right?
I have to say that I have seen it since it's my school, one of my schools. Is gorgeous. The windows are huge and all the way down to that little itty bitty, so they can look right out into. That's beautiful. It's lovely. And there's no one else on the speakers list. So we have exhausted our agenda, and I declare this meeting to be adjourned.